Lucille Ball, once the most beloved woman on American television, spent her final days in almost complete loneliness. It's hard to believe that the same woman who brought laughter to millions every Monday night, who changed the face of comedy forever, would end her life surrounded by silence and emptiness. At the peak of her fame, Lucille Ball had 44 million people tuning in to watch her on I Love Lucy. But in 1989, when she passed away, she didn't have her family by her side. Her huge mansions felt cold and lifeless, filled only with hired help. Her children were distant, both emotionally and physically. Even her old Hollywood friends who once celebrated her success had quietly disappeared from her life, one after another. The sad truth is that the woman who brought joy to so many spent her last years in heartbreaking isolation. The reason behind this sad ending lies in a series of painful events involving money, betrayal, and family secrets that eventually tore apart everything she had worked so hard to build. Lucille Ball's story began with sorrow. She was only 3 years old when her father died. His death came suddenly in February of 1915 from typhoid fever. He was just 27 years old, and her mother was pregnant with Lucille's younger brother at the time. The family had been moving frequently because of her father's job with the telephone company. They lived in different places across the country: New York, New Jersey, Montana, and finally Michigan, where tragedy struck. His death shattered the family. Her mother became so depressed that she could no longer care for her children. Lucille was sent to live with her aunt, and her baby brother was sent to live with their grandparents. Lucille later said that her childhood was marked by constant loss and misfortune. One moment from that time stayed in her memory for the rest of her life. Right after her mother told her about her father's death, a framed picture suddenly fell off the wall. Then she noticed small gray sparrows fluttering at the kitchen window. It was a strange and eerie experience that left a lasting impression. From that day forward, Lucille developed a fear of birds, not the real ones, but pictures, drawings, or anything that reminded her of them. Even as a famous adult, she refused to stay in hotel rooms that had any bird-themed decorations. That fear never left her. Just when life seemed like it might settle down, another tragedy hit. When Lucille was around 12 years old, a terrible accident happened in her backyard. Her stepfather had set up a safe area for target practice with a .22 caliber rifle. He made sure that the kids aimed only at an empty field to avoid any accidents. But one day, an 8-year-old neighborhood boy who wasn't supposed to be there showed up without warning. As another child fired the gun, the young boy suddenly stood up and was struck by the bullet. The shot hit his spine and left him paralyzed for life. The boy's family sued Lucille's family and won the case. It completely ruined them. They lost everything: their house, their furniture, even their insurance. Lucille's grandfather, overwhelmed with guilt, never worked again. The family was forced to leave town in shame. Lucille later said that one small mistake destroyed her family's life forever. Then came her teenage years, which brought more emotional storms. When Lucille was just 14 years old, she fell in love with a 21-year-old man named Johnny DeVita. He had a bad reputation in their town, and her mother strongly disapproved of their relationship. Determined to protect her daughter from making a mistake, Lucille's mother scraped together whatever little money she had and sent Lucille to a top drama school in New York City. She hoped that moving away and focusing on acting would help her daughter find a better path. But things didn't go as planned. Lucille found herself in the same acting class as Bette Davis, who would go on to become a Hollywood legend. While Davis flourished, Lucille struggled. Her teachers were brutally honest. They told her that she didn't have any talent and that acting was not for her. One version of the story even says that they returned her mother's tuition money and advised Lucille to give up her dreams. Lucille later admitted that the only thing she really learned at that school was how to be afraid. But instead of breaking her, that rejection only made her more determined. She returned to New York in 1928, still dreaming of becoming a star and more determined than ever to prove her critics wrong. But just as her career was starting to take shape, she was struck by a severe illness, rheumatic fever. It was so bad that she could barely move for 2 years. Those years, when she should have been building her career, were lost to the illness. Most people would have given up, but not Lucille. She used that time to think about everything the teachers had said about her. And instead of letting those words defeat her, she used them as motivation to grow stronger. When she finally recovered, she came back even more focused. It was around this time that she got a modeling job with the famous fashion designer Hattie Carnegie. It was a turning point in her life. Carnegie saw something special in Lucille but insisted on one major change. She had to bleach her natural brown hair to blonde. Lucille didn't hesitate. She changed her look and learned how to carry herself in elegant gowns. She absorbed everything about grace, style, and presence. This experience gave her the kind of training no acting school ever could. Though she still dreamed of acting, modeling helped her perfect her posture, movement, and ability to capture attention without even speaking. These skills helped her immensely when she returned to acting auditions. Through the 1930s and early 1940s, Lucille took whatever acting roles she could find. She played background characters, forgettable leads, and goofy comedic roles in over 75 films. She worked non-stop, but she couldn't break into the top level of stardom. Hollywood gave her the nickname Queen of the B's because she starred in so many B-movies, low-budget films that never made it big. Although Lucille laughed about it and sometimes called herself the Queen of the B-pluses, the truth was that it hurt. She worked incredibly hard, but studios kept trying to force her into roles that didn't fit. They saw her as a flapper, a sidekick, or a comic relief, not as a lead actress. Still, she never gave up. The roles may not have been glamorous, but they gave her something better: experience. She learned how the film industry worked from the inside out. She figured out what audiences liked and what didn't work, and she used that knowledge to prepare herself for something bigger. In 1940, Lucille met Desi Arnaz on the set of the movie Too Many Girls. She was already an experienced actress, and he was a young, energetic Cuban bandleader just getting started in Hollywood. The chemistry between them was instant. Desi boldly walked up to Lucille and asked if she knew how to rumba. When she said no, he told her he could teach her, if she agreed to go out with him that night. She was hooked. She later admitted she had never fallen in love so fast. Desi was full of charm, handsome, and had a wild energy that fascinated her. The people working on the film noticed how quickly they became close and even placed bets on how long the relationship would last. It all seemed too quick and too intense, but Lucille couldn't resist. She said he scared her a little, but in an exciting way. After filming ended, they kept their relationship alive through long-distance phone calls. In fact, Lucille estimated she spent about $29,000 on phone bills just talking to Desi. Then in November 1940, both of them happened to be in New York. Desi was performing at a theater, and Lucille was doing a magazine interview. In that interview, she told the reporter that her relationship with Desi would never last. But later that same day, after finding out that Desi might be seeing another woman, Lucille angrily went to his place. That fight ended with a shocking twist. Desi proposed. They jumped into a car, drove to Connecticut, and got married that night, only 6 months after meeting. Their marriage surprised many people. In the 1940s, interracial couples faced a lot of prejudice, especially in Hollywood. Studios didn't believe that an American audience would accept a Cuban man and a white woman as a couple, either on screen or off. Later, when Lucille wanted to turn her radio show into a television series, she insisted Desi play her husband on the show too. CBS didn't like the idea at all. They thought Desi's heavy accent and Cuban heritage would turn off viewers. But Lucille stood her ground. She and Desi created a live stage act to prove they could work as a team. They traveled the country, performing comedy and musical routines, and audiences loved them. The act was such a success that CBS finally agreed to give them a shot. And that's how I Love Lucy was born. Creating the show wasn't easy. CBS wanted it filmed in New York, but Lucille refused to leave Hollywood. This choice ended up changing television history. Desi helped develop a new way to film the show using 3 cameras in front of a live audience. It was risky and complicated, but it allowed for better performances and real-time audience reactions. They also insisted on using high-quality 35mm film instead of cheap tape. That decision made it possible for the show to be rebroadcast for generations. Lucille and Desi agreed to take a smaller salary in exchange for owning the rights through their company, Desilu. That move turned I Love Lucy into one of the first major syndicated shows and made them millions in the long run. Even when Lucille became pregnant in real life, the show broke boundaries. At the time, it was considered inappropriate to even mention pregnancy on TV. CBS and their sponsor Philip Morris didn't like the idea of showing a pregnant woman on screen. But once again, Lucille stood firm. She fought to have her real-life experience included in the storyline, and the audience embraced it. It was one of many ways she changed what people thought was acceptable in entertainment. Lucille Ball's life was a mixture of brilliance and heartbreak, triumph and betrayal. She rose from a lonely, tragic childhood to become one of the most powerful women in Hollywood. But in the end, despite all her success, she found herself alone, isolated by the very industry that once adored her and by a family that had grown distant. Her story is a reminder that fame and fortune don't always bring happiness, and that even those who bring laughter to the world can suffer in silence. They told Desi and Lucille that her pregnancy couldn't be shown on TV, but Lucy and Desi didn't back down. They didn't want to hide her behind props or pretend nothing was happening. Instead, the writers came up with a smart solution. They included her pregnancy in the storyline but avoided using the word pregnant. They used gentler words like expecting or with child, and in one episode, they even used the French word enceinte just to be extra careful. They had religious leaders review the script to make sure everything was appropriate. When the episode where Lucy gives birth aired in January 1953, the same day Lucille gave birth in real life, 44 million people tuned in. There's a famous story that water usage across the country dropped during the broadcast because no one wanted to leave their TV even for a moment. After that, I Love Lucy became unstoppable. For 4 out of its 6 seasons, it was the most watched show in America. When it ended in 1957, it was still at the top of the ratings, something only The Andy Griffith Show and Seinfeld managed to do later. Lucy won an Emmy for Best Comedian, and Desi and the producer Jess Oppenheimer also received Emmys. Altogether, the show won 5 Emmys and became a historic moment in TV. Even long after it ended, I Love Lucy continued to attract new fans. Reruns aired across the world. In 2012, it was named the best TV show of all time in a poll. In 2013, a color version of the Christmas special drew more than 8 million viewers in one night. Over 60 years later, Lucy and Desi's show was still making people laugh. Behind the camera, they were making business moves too. They started Desilu Productions, and in just a few years, it became the biggest independent TV studio in the U.S. They bought RKO Studios for $6 million and started making hits like The Untouchables, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Dick Van Dyke Show. It all began because 2 people wanted to be together and believed in their vision. But in 1960, Lucy and Desi's marriage came to an end. What shocked people was what came next. Lucy bought out Desi's shares in Desilu for $2.5 million and became the head of the studio. At that time, no woman had ever led a major Hollywood studio. Many doubted her. They said she was just a funny woman, not a real business leader. But Lucy proved them wrong. While still acting in The Lucy Show, she was also making major business decisions, managing huge budgets, closing deals, and planning for the future. She even started a syndication branch within Desilu, which was very rare back then. Then in 1966, Lucy made a bold decision. She approved 2 expensive and unusual shows that nobody else believed in, Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Her team said the shows were too strange, too costly, and too risky. Lucy misunderstood Star Trek at first, thinking it was about celebrities touring, but still, she trusted her instincts. She believed in something others didn't see. And she was right. Both shows became legendary. By early 1967, Desilu was booming again. Lucy sold the studio for $17 million, securing her place as one of the smartest minds in television. Long before all of this, Lucy and Desi had made another small but important decision that changed TV forever. CBS wanted them to film I Love Lucy live in New York, but they insisted on staying in California. They even offered to take a pay cut if they could shoot the show on 35mm film. That one decision made reruns possible and created the syndication industry. It meant that I Love Lucy would continue earning money for decades. Even today, the reruns have earned more than $700 million. Lucille Ball didn't just make people laugh. She transformed television. She did it by taking bold risks, believing in herself, and never giving up. In September 1953, something almost ended her career. It started with a simple rumor. A gossip reporter on national radio hinted that a red-haired TV star had once been a communist. He didn't name her, but everyone knew who he meant. The next morning, reporters gathered outside Lucy and Desi's home. Newspapers quickly ran headlines calling Lucille a communist. This wasn't just gossip. Back then, being linked to communism could ruin your life. People were losing jobs and getting blacklisted. At that time, I Love Lucy had 44 million viewers and millions in sponsorships. Everything was at risk over something Lucy had done in 1936. She had registered to vote as a communist, not because she believed in it, but to make her grandfather happy. He had raised her and supported workers' rights. She was just trying to keep family peace. Now, that innocent act came back to haunt her. She met with a government investigator and told the truth. She said she had never been to a meeting, and that the only time her name came up was from a claim that someone once held a meeting at her house without her knowledge. Her brother backed her up. They both insisted she only did it to please their grandfather, not because she supported any political movement. While Lucy was dealing with fear and uncertainty, Desi was doing everything he could to help. He invited reporters to their home and explained everything clearly. Then, during the filming of the season's first episode, with journalists in the audience, Desi did something bold. He spoke directly to them from the stage and said he had someone on the phone. He put the call on speaker. It was J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI. Hoover said clearly, Lucille Ball was not a communist. The audience cheered. The moment was electric. Desi wasn't done yet. He looked out at the crowd and said, "Now I want you to meet my favorite redhead. The only thing red about her is her hair, and even that's not legitimate." Everyone laughed, and Lucy stepped into the spotlight in tears. Not long after, she was named Woman of the Year. She and Desi were invited to the White House for dinner. They had survived the scandal, with truth, courage, and a little humor. After her painful divorce from Desi in 1960, Lucy didn't plan to marry again. She was 49 and heartbroken. But everything changed when a friend set her up on a blind date in New York with a nightclub comic named Gary Morton. Lucy was performing on Broadway at the time. Their date was at a pizza place, nothing fancy, but they clicked. Gary was 13 years younger and claimed he had never seen I Love Lucy because he worked on Monday nights. Lucy liked that. He wasn't impressed by her fame. They started dating and married 11 months later. The wedding was small, with just 40 guests, but fans gathered outside cheering. Lucy later wrote that Gary was kind, funny, and loving, and she felt lucky. They stayed married for nearly 28 years until her death. When they met, Lucy was starring in her first and only Broadway show, Wildcat. It was supposed to be a hit, but things went wrong from the start. A snowstorm delayed the opening, and the sets got stuck on the highway. Lucy's company had invested a lot of money, and the pressure was intense. Audiences expected the TV version of Lucy Ricardo, but this role was different. Lucy began changing her performance, adding humor people recognized, but it didn't help. Reviews were poor. The stress made her sick. One night she even collapsed on stage. The show shut down for good after just 171 performances. Her home life was stressful too. In 1970, her teenage son Desi Jr. started dating actress Patty Duke, who was 23. Lucy didn't approve at all. It was ironic. She had once been older than Desi Sr. when they married, but now she was furious. She gave Desi Jr. harsh ultimatums. He believed she was trying to protect the family's reputation. Patty was hurt by how Lucy treated her. She was also struggling with her own mental health and dating other men, including actor John Astin. The relationship kept going on and off. Then came a scandal. Patty got pregnant after a brief marriage to Michael Tell that lasted only 13 days. Rumors spread that Desi Jr. was the real father. Lucy was horrified. She had spent years building a clean public image, and this was her worst fear. Patty later admitted she let people think Desi Jr. was the father, though he wasn't. When her baby Sean was born in 1971, reporters swarmed the hospital. Desi Sr. and his daughter Lucy visited the baby. Lucille Ball did not. Years later, DNA tests showed Michael Tell was the real father, but Desi Jr. stayed in Sean's life. Despite the truth, the damage was done. The press, rumors, and gossip turned Lucy's fears into reality. Even after I Love Lucy ended, Lucy didn't stop working. In 1962, she launched The Lucy Show, which became more popular than the first one. But by 1968, she sold Desilu and started fresh with a new show, Here's Lucy. This time, her real children played her kids. The show tried to connect with the times, featuring topics like civil rights and rock music. But by 1973, ratings dropped. Her daughter left the show, and Lucy was thinking about movies again. Behind the scenes, things were changing. Her close friend and co-star Vivian Vance had left earlier. The long commute and lack of creative control had worn her out. She asked for more support, didn't get it, and left. It devastated Lucy. She cried privately, saying she couldn't imagine the show without Vivian. The format had to be changed after she left. Then in 1985, at 74, Lucy did something unexpected. She played a homeless woman in a TV drama Stone Pillow to show she could act in serious roles. It was a success. Inspired, she tried one more sitcom life with Lucy, but times had changed. It was cancelled after just 8 episodes, the first time that had happened to her. It hurt deeply. She withdrew from the spotlight. Her last public TV appearance was at the 1989 Oscars, standing beside Bob Hope and receiving a standing ovation. A month later, she passed away. But before that, something touching happened. In 1986, Desi Arnaz was dying of cancer. Despite their divorce, Lucy still cared. She visited often. On what would have been their 46th anniversary, she called Desi. He couldn't speak well, but she told him over and over that she loved him. He nodded and said, "I love you too, honey," and added, "Good luck with your show." 2 days later, Desi passed away with Lucy nearby. 3 years later, on April 18, 1989, Lucy was rushed to the hospital with chest pain. Doctors found a tear in her heart's main artery. She had surgery and survived for a while. Fans sent thousands of cards, hoping she'd recover. But 8 days later, she felt sudden pain and her heart gave out. Doctors tried for an hour to save her, but she died on April 26, 1989, at age 77. The world lost not just a star, but a woman who fought her whole life to be seen, to be loved, and to be remembered.